Allen Company, 47 years young and a proud sponsor, wishes OOIDA all the best as you celebrate 50 years.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
It's the 46th anniversary of the completion of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and this is Landline Now. Criminals have set their sights on truckers in 2023. Cargo theft and fraud schemes have skyrocketed over the first 5 months of the year. Keith Lewis of CargoNet tells us what's behind the spike and what you can do to protect yourself. A decrease in the number of loads posted on the MembersEdge load board and an increase in the number of trucks posted. Landline Now's Ashley Blackford has all the details with DAT in today's market update, including one hot market to watch. And finally, how brokers pay truckers has been an ongoing issue in the industry, but one trucker who stopped in recently to see Marty Ellis had a very unusual idea of how that process could work. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, today's headlines. NHTSA moves one step closer to an automatic emergency braking requirement for all vehicles. The latest diesel price information shows another change. And we have new details about CVSA's upcoming Safe Driver Week enforcement campaign. And now, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is forging ahead with plans to require automatic emergency braking in virtually every vehicle on the road. A proposed rule for heavy-duty trucks is likely coming soon, but first, NHTSA is focusing on passenger vehicles. The agency today announcing a notice of proposed rulemaking that would require the automatic emergency braking technology in cars and light trucks 3 years after publication of a final rule. NHTSA estimates that the mandate would save at least 360 lives a year and reduce injuries by at least 24,000 annually. The agency is also in the final stages of completing a separate proposal that would require similar systems for heavy trucks. And today's developments also give us an idea about the timeline for that. The proposal announced today was submitted to the White House for review in mid-February, putting the process on a roughly 3-month track. So with the heavy-duty vehicle proposal being submitted to the White House in early April, that suggests that the next notice is likely just a few weeks away. The announcement comes one day after NHTSA announced it had opened up an investigation into 250,000 Daimler trucks. The agency says it's looking into complaints that the automatic emergency braking on Freightliner Cascadia trucks can stop unexpectedly for no apparent reason. The probe covers model years 2017 through 2022. In documents posted to NHTSA's website, the agency says it has gotten 18 complaints from owners who say the brakes on their Freightliner Cascadia trucks engage without any obstacle in the road. Meanwhile, the Biden administration has pulled the nomination of Ann Carlson to serve as the head of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. Carlson, the acting head of the agency, was formally nominated for the post in March, and she faced opposition from the jump. All 13 Republicans serving on the Senate Commerce and Transportation Committee recently wrote a letter to Carlson, raising concerns about her record. They specifically pointed to her role in applying new fuel efficiency standards for passenger cars and light trucks while serving as chief counsel of NHTSA. President Biden has had a tough time getting his nominees through the Senate Commerce Committee. At least 2 other nominees for other agencies failed to make it through after pushback from Republican senators, and 3 of the Democrats serving on that committee face tough re-election battles next year. Prices at the pump continue trending downward. The Energy Information Administration's weekly report was delayed a day due to the holiday weekend, and when it came out on Tuesday, it showed the average cost nationwide dipping nearly 3 cents last week to $3.85 a gallon. All 10 regions the EIA track saw prices go down, and over the past 17 weeks, the average price nationwide has dipped in all but one of them. Fast forward to this week, and ProMiles.com numbers show a similar trend. They had the average price nationwide at $3.95 on Wednesday morning, down a nickel compared to last week at the same time, with prices dropping in all 10 regions they track as well. The volume of freight hauled by trucks back and forth across the U.S. border was up in March. The Bureau of Transportation Statistics says the total value of truck freight hauled was more than $90 billion. That's an increase of nearly 19% from February and an increase of more than 5% compared to March of 2022. Cross-border freight hauled by trucks across the U.S. northern border rose by more than 2% compared to a year earlier. At the southern border, the value of freight increased by nearly 8%. Accounting for all modes of transportation, the total value of cross-border freight reached more than $141 billion in March. That is a decrease of less than 1% compared to the previous year, but an increase of 18% compared to the previous month. The last time overall cross-border freight had a year-to-year decline was in February of 2021. New details tonight about CVSA's upcoming Safe Driver Week campaign. The Alliance says the focus of this year's enforcement blitz, scheduled for July 9th through the 15th throughout North America, will be speeding. If that sounds familiar, that's because that's been the focus of the campaign in recent years as well. Law enforcement will also be on the lookout for other unsafe driving behaviors in both commercial vehicles and passenger vehicles. That includes distracted driving, improper lane changes, and failure to wear a seatbelt. During last year's Safe Driver Week campaign, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance says law enforcement in Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. pulled over more than 35,000 vehicles and handed out more than 26,000 warnings and citations. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has launched a campaign dedicated to raising awareness about human trafficking in the trucking industry. It's called Your Roads, Their Freedom. The goal is to help commercial drivers and others recognize the signs of human trafficking and report the crime to authorities. In a news release, FMCSA said millions of men, women, and children are held against their will every year and trafficked into forced labor and commercial sex. For more information and access to the resources FMCSA is providing, check out fmcsa.dot.gov/stophumantrafficking. We've also got a link at landlinenow.com. A shareholder of U.S. Express is trying to stop the carrier's merger with Knight-Swift. Stephen Bushansky filed a lawsuit last week against U.S. Express, asking a federal court to stop the merger vote. Bushansky claims he and other shareholders don't have a full financial picture of the deal, namely the financial projections. The lawsuit comes 1 month before U.S. Express shareholders are scheduled to vote on the more than $800 million deal. That vote is scheduled for June 29th, but the lawsuit is asking for a trial, which could push things back. It should be noted that Bushansky is no stranger to filing lawsuits. Federal court records show him as a plaintiff in at least 100 lawsuits against various companies over the past few years. Several dozen new truck parking spaces have just been added to eastern Arkansas. The Arkansas DOT held a ribbon-cutting ceremony on Tuesday for an expanded commercial vehicle parking area off westbound I-40 in West Memphis. It has 84 spaces for overnight parking. The area used to be a welcome center. And finally, a cautionary tale. Most of us have been there, late to the airport, scrambling to catch a flight. But I'm guessing you didn't steal a backhoe to get there. Unless you're the Southern Illinois man who just did that recently. The Williamson County Sheriff's Office says he allegedly stole a backhoe to drive about 10 miles to an airport to catch a flight. They posted the security camera footage on Facebook. It shows the suspect arriving at Veterans Airport of Southern Illinois on top of a backhoe last week and leaving it in the airport parking lot. He's then seen walking across the street with a guitar case in hand and right into the airport lobby. The owner of the backhoe arrived at the airport a short time later and identified the equipment as his. The backhoe bandit has been identified and charged with felony theft. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. OOIDA is offering an online version of its Truck to Success seminar. The 3-day in-depth training offers step-by-step guidance for truckers considering becoming owner-operators or moving onto their own authority. We'll have a link to where you can take the course at our website, landlinenow.com. Starting Thursday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour Truck the Spirit of the American Trucker will be at the TA in Tooele, Utah. That's located at Exit 99 off Interstate 80. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for 2 years at $50, a $40 discount. Next, Scott Thompson talks with Keith Lewis of CargoNet. Landline Now will be back in a moment.
You trust PrePass for more bypasses? Now let PrePass help with tolls. PrePass toll service means lower cost, one invoice for all tolls, and fewer violations. Created by truckers for truckers. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Every make, every model, and every corner of the country. Technical smarts and quality parts. That's how we roll. Bring your rig into TA Truck Service.
Landline Now, welcome back. If there were ever a time to be vigilant as a truck driver, that time is now. Cargo theft is on the rise. CargoNet, a New Jersey-based data and information sharing company that works with carriers and law enforcement to combat cargo theft, tracks these things. And so far, over the first 20 weeks of 2023, CargoNet says there have been more than 900 reports of theft or fraud or other criminal activity within the supply chain. That's up 41% from last year, and that's just the start. Keith Lewis, CargoNet's Vice President of Operations, says fraudsters and scammers have also been incredibly active this year. We'll tackle these two issues separately, starting with the latter. Since the start of 2023, CargoNet says fictitious pickup and fraud complaints are up a staggering 675% compared to the same period last year. And while this kind of fraud has been around for a while, Lewis says the issue has exploded in recent months.
This fraud started in South Florida back in '06, somewhere in there, with people just starting fake trucking companies. I could just go on, start a fake trucking company, get some insurance, and go pick up a load, or go pick up 10 loads in the same day. So I'm registered on, say, Safer with one truck, but I go pick up 10 loads in one day with 10 different brokers. And then I disappear with those 10 loads. I got almost zero investment in starting that trucking company. By the time the drivers pick up the load and take them to my fencing, whoever I sold them to, and it's not that complicated. It's not like they've got real sophistication in the bad guy secondary market. It's not sophisticated. It's very rudimentary. So while I'm selling those loads, I've already started 2 other trucking companies to do the same thing. That started around like 2006, 7, and then it's emerged to what we're dealing with today.
And Lewis says law enforcement is in fact trying to deal with it, but the bad guys tend to be one step ahead, as bad guys often are.
Misdirected loads. It's very easy now. The bad guys have figured out that if I can misdirect loads, and it's a different type of fraud. So it's a new type of fraud that we're seeing from the old identity theft of a carrier. Not stealing the identity. I can get an innocent surrogate, whether I'm here or I'm in another country, to pick up a legitimate load, is a good guy. That person doesn't know he's involved in the crime. I'm using this person. I take it to a third-party warehouse, and then I have my other bad guy truck pick it up there from the third-party warehouse. So we're seeing quite a bit of this misdirection. Probably the lion's share. We took in 52 of these, just in California, 52 of these frauds just in the month of December. And you can see our numbers by state. It's just jumped way up, with California obviously being the hotbed for this. And it's become so easy and so hard for law enforcement to work this. And we put out information on this. We put out advisories, and we get reports, say, from one member telling us about a bad guy. And we put out an alert on this bad guy, and hopefully that mitigates future opportunities. But sometimes it doesn't. So it's a different way to do this. The bad guys, and that's what I talk about. They're playing chess. They figured out a better way to build a mousetrap. Just when the industry gets good at vetting what was going on and doing some things, the bad guys come up with a better mousetrap.
We just got through one holiday weekend, Memorial Day, but more are coming. And when it comes to fraud and cargo theft, the holidays are hunting season for criminals. And that's because drivers are often in a hurry to finish up their work so they can get home, and criminals love to seize on vulnerabilities.
Vetting somewhat, I wouldn't say it goes by the wayside, but vetting sometimes on intermediaries, on brokers, becomes a little lax. We've got to get the freight moving. There's no drivers. We don't want to call the customer and give them the load back. So, it's a kind of almost like a euphoric time where we got to get this stuff going, and we take our eye off the ball. And the thieves know this, and they take advantage of it.
As for why now, Lewis says the changing landscape of the supply chain is playing a role.
I've been on the stage for 20 years. I've worked cargo theft either for CargoNet or from a law enforcement standpoint for 20 years. And it's the speed of the supply chain. The speed of the supply chain is not static. It's dynamic. It's moving rapidly faster and faster. The bad guys are getting smarter and smarter. And I've said this on calls, and Michelle probably get tired of me saying it, but we as supply chain professionals are playing checkers and the bad guys are playing chess. They're using the speed of the supply chain. They're using technology presented. Law enforcement can't keep up with the technology that, the resources. There's some things that the bad guys are doing now. There's no laws against, right? So there's no crime. When I'm talking about the double brokering situation, scams and things like that have kind of taken over blind shipments that have kind of jumped right in to what we're dealing with. Misdirected loads, those type of things, putting the load on the rail. It's wrong, but there's no crime against it. So the bad guys are using all that to our advantage. So I would say it's the speed and the dynamics of the supply chain. We in the supply chain are vetting people without seeing them. We're doing everything through various tools out there, various companies like ours, using resources they have. It's basically the information they're taking in. This is one of the bigger problems. The information that's being presented to the person vetting is self-reported by the bad guy. So it's things that they've posted about themselves through these various outlets where people can go to and vet on insurance information, number of trucks. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here, but it's like grading my own test paper. And therein lies one of the big problems we have. I'm setting up my own company and giving myself my own credibility.
So fraud is on the rise, as we told you earlier, so too is cargo theft. Just to remind you here, over the first 20 weeks of 2023, CargoNet says there have been more than 900 reports of theft or fraud or other criminal activity within the supply chain, up 41% from last year. And while the reasons for spiking numbers change, the prevention measures don't, Lewis says. His advice, stay vigilant, secure all trailers loaded and unloaded with high-security barrier seals and hardened padlocks, and back up to something that would make a thief think twice before trying to steal your load.
One of the problems is the shipper puts a seal on, and I took some pictures of this the other night. A shipper puts a seal on, and there's no way to get a bolt seal. They put their own seal on, like I say, a bolt seal. The driver can't put their padlock on because there's a bolt seal on there. The driver may have a really good stainless steel alloy enforcer type padlock. Now they can't get it on because there's a bolt seal, and a bolt seal can be taken off. You can go through it like butter with a set of bolt cutters, or you can use a big set of channel-lock pliers and twist it off. So what I always recommend to drivers is when they get to that truck stop, buddy up with someone, say, hey, what do you're going to be here all night. I'm going to be here all night. Let's find a safe place to park in the truck stop. You stand at the back and tell me when to stop, and we'll back our trailers up. I was talking to two drivers the other night at a truck stop here, and they were asking me the same question. And I said, why don't you guys back your trailers up to each other, put them up tight. You're both leaving here at 6 a.m. Nobody's breaking into a trailer in broad daylight or early morning hours. The bad guys have already left. It's past bad guy hours. So you guys don't have to coordinate leaving, but if it's daylight, you're going to be safe. And just simple things like that don't cost any money. Back up to a telephone pole, back up to a building, back up to a berm. Some of the truck stops I see, you back up on the back row and it's flat ground. So the bad guy, you make it easy for the bad guy to get back inside the trailer because he can stand on flat ground. If you look at some of these rest area truck stops and things like that, you can back up to, say, a berm where basically once the driver backs up the trailer, there's a steep drop off. And if you need a picture of what I'm talking about, I can send it to Michelle and she can send it over to you. But a steep drop off behind the trailer where the driver needs a truck to back up with a ladder on the truck just to reach the trailer. It's the simple things, right? It's nothing complicated. It's nothing. The technology stuff all helps, but it's the simple things. It's the environmental type of precautions that a driver can take. Use the environment to harden your target.
As a general rule, it's best to keep these things in mind no matter where you are and no matter the time of day. But Lewis says there are certain times that bring the thieves out more than others, and it's usually the times when humans get tired.
Sun goes down, 7, 8 o'clock at night, and there's a lot of activity. And we're talking rest areas, truck stops, and I assume we're still talking about the same thing, what drivers can do. Is that still our topic here? So what drivers can do, the hours, the bad guy hours, and bad guy days of the week they work. There's some funny stories there that I've got from my past. So 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night, the sun's going down. There's still a lot of activity in the truck stop. So you're pretty safe because drivers are coming in off the road. They're getting fuel, getting back on the road. When the good guy drivers go to sleep, that's when the bad guy goes to work. So that's what I mean by bad guy hours. So the drivers pull in, they're pulling in. There's a lot of activity. They're going in, getting fuel, so they don't have to deal with it in the morning, grab something to eat, maybe checking their lights on their trailer. So there's a lot of walking around. The bad guys know that probably, just like us, normal people, the truckers are going to bed 11 o'clock at night. And 3 thefts in particular I'm thinking about where the drivers were followed from California to a truck stop. The drivers all left the truck stop, and I believe they were followed. Drivers leave the trucks, or drivers all leave the shipper, say 5 o'clock in the afternoon in SoCal. They get to where they're going to rest for the night. It's 11:45, and these 3 thefts that I'm thinking about right now that are on the top of my mind all happened. The 911 calls all went out about 11:45 at night. So that kind of tells you that the bad guys are waiting for the drivers to bed down, the activity to slow down at the truck stop. They're spotted. They're checking it out. They've got their people inside the truck stop watching the drivers. These are things that I learned from working cargo theft. That if I watch a driver walk in a truck stop and a few minutes later the bad guy are arrested, I see him walking in the truck stop following the driver to communicate with the guys in the parking lot that the driver's inside. It's okay to steal his truck or break into the trailer.
It's a good idea to stay vigilant at all times, but when it comes to holiday weekends, whether it be Memorial Day, the 4th of July, or Thanksgiving, the advice holds even more weight.
It's due to the unattended vehicles, people picking up loads, shippers wanting to get loads off their dock on Friday, drivers not having a safe place to secure the loads over the weekend. I can't stress enough the problem of truck parking in the United States, secure truck parking, and that really doesn't fall back on the shoulders of the driver, but somehow it seems like it always falls back on the shoulders of the driver to find that secured parking spot. You'll have that freight that's sitting in unattended areas.
As for what thieves are looking for, Lewis says they'll often take what they can get, but when it comes to holiday weekends, the menu can be a bit more focused.
It's a push-pull. What is the consumer pulling through the supply chain right now? What does the consumer want for this weekend? It's a holiday weekend, so what are we doing? We're having cookouts, so we'll see a lot of food stolen. We'll see a lot of alcoholic beverages stolen, a lot of sodas, energy drinks, those type of things stolen. And pretty much anything someone can steal, they will. But if I'm a good thief, I want to have my product sold as soon as it gets in my hands. So it's what is the consumer buying right now? The things I just mentioned, plus solar panels are on the rise. I've got people coming to my house every day, knocking on the door, wanting to sell me solar panels for my roof. Local contractors where I live. I live in the Western United States, and solar panels is a big, big thing here. So obviously, if they're coming to my house, knocking on the door, people are buying them. The demand for those type of items and electronics, we can't forget about electronics, gadgets, those type of things, monitors. Just a couple of nights ago, a load that I was aware of was 2 loads of electronics were targeted for pilferages. And we always seem to forget about pilferages, somebody breaking in the back of a trailer and taking a few items. A couple trailers leave California, head to the same truck stop. Drivers don't know each other. They happen to park next to each other. It's a truck stop of both loaded with electronics, and the bad guys kind of get a 2-for-1. Some off of one trailer and some off of another trailer.
So when it comes to avoid being a victim, it may take some added effort these days, but Lewis says a little bit of prevention goes a long way.
As my dad always used to say, the horses are out of the barn, son. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
So stay vigilant, and as the old saying goes, if something seems too good to be true or if something smells off, trust your instincts and do a little extra due diligence to make sure those horses stay in the barn and that toothpaste stays in the tube. For Landline Now, I'm Scott Thompson, and we're back in just a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine ViberTech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with ViberTech TVD, recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours. Firestone tires are for more of everything. more miles for every tire dollar, and more confidence in your fleet. At Firestone, we help fleets save with dependable value. Find your local Firestone dealer today at firestonetire.com/dealer.
Landline Now, welcome back. There are a number of critical questions you need to answer in order to run a successful trucking business. Among the most important of those questions are, where's the freight going to be and how much is it going to pay? Today, Landline Now senior correspondent Ashley Blackford will bring us answers to both of those important questions with a look at this week's freight markets with the folks from DAT. Here's Ashley now with the report.
Thanks, Mark, and hello once again to Robert Rouse with DAT. How are you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great, Ashley.
Now, starting off, what did the weekly rate data look like for all three equipment categories?
Yeah, so after going into a holiday weekend last week, we saw rates kind of not change a ton. So overall, vans were running around $2.15 a mile last week. That was up slightly, 2 cents per mile from the previous week, which is good to see. Reefers came in at $2.53 per mile. That's actually no change from the previous week. Not totally shocking because reefer's been running pretty hot as produce season is really kicking in at this time of year. And then flatbeds came in at $2.71 per mile, and that was actually up 2 cents per mile as well from the previous week. Now, just to note, these are the national average broker to carrier rates based on the actual loads moved last week, but they do include a portion equal to the average fuel surcharge. So to look at each one in particular, it was at 44 cents per mile for vans last week, 48 cents per mile for reefers, and 53 cents per mile for flatbeds last week. One of the trends that we have been seeing for those fuel surcharges, as fuel continues to drop slightly, we're starting to see those come down as well. And so that's definitely having an impact in play in the jumps in the things we're seeing in the rates.
What did activity look like on the load board?
Yeah, so the number of loads posted on the MembersEdge load board actually decreased 11% last week. That's not a total shock, as we had a pretty high week the week previously with the DOT enforcement and the need for more loads and trucks out there for that week and going into the holiday week. So we're not totally shocked by that, but it did drop about 11% last week. The number of trucks posted on the network actually increased 2.6% compared to the previous week. That's to be expected with the lower load volumes. We expect trucks to jump up a little bit, so that's not totally shocking for this time of year.
And what did the load to truck ratios look like?
Yeah, so the load to truck ratios reflect the number of loads and trucks posted to MembersEdge. When we look specifically at vans, they were at 2.77 loads for every truck on the MembersEdge load board, meaning that there was about 2 to 3 trucks for every, or 2 to 3 loads for every truck posted. The previous week, it was 3.24. So we did see a slight drop for vans. Switching over to reefers were about 3.9 loads per every truck. And that's actually down from last week where it was at 5.25. And lastly, flatbeds were at 12.56 loads per every truck. And that ratio was at 13.58 the previous week. So all three equipment types did drop slightly in the load to truck ratios, partly due to the holiday week.
And putting those numbers into context, what is the load to truck ratio?
Yeah, absolutely. There are millions of loads and trucks posted on the DAT network each week. And in markets down to the 3-digit zip code, at any given time, we can divide the number of loads posted by the number of trucks posted on the DAT network. And that gets us a load to truck ratio. One of the things that is super important for drivers to know is how could they use that data to help better their business. So the load to truck ratio is very similar, an indicator of truckload capacity, supply and demand in a specific market. When there are lots of loads and not a lot of trucks in any given market, the load to truck ratio will rise. And when there aren't many loads or there are a lot of trucks available, the ratio will go down. Changes in the load to truck ratio usually signal changes in spot rates. When the load to truck ratio moves higher, rates usually follow because brokers and shippers have freight to move and don't have a lot of trucks to actually move them on, and so they'll pay more for those trucks. The trend is actually more important than the actual number, so seeing if it's going up or going down. Brokers may repost loads if they're not covered right away. Many truckers prefer not to post their trucks. So the load truck ratio indicates pressure, more like a barometer than a thermometer, and it's pretty relative. Is there more pressure in one city than another? Is there more pressure today than there is last week? And focus on the direction the number is moving. You can also use the load to truck ratio to plan your next move. Ideally, you want to go into markets where the demand for trucks is super high. And if the demand is low where you're going, you want to account for that in your deadhead and take a lower rate in order to get out of a specific market. But the biggest thing to take away is the higher the load to truck ratio, the more leverage you as the driver typically have in that negotiation process.
What's one of the hot markets of the week?
So one of the hottest markets that I actually, think is really cool is Georgia. It's peach season in Georgia, and harvest in May wrap up around Labor Day. Georgia ranks third in the nation in annual production of peaches after California and South Carolina. This week, actually, is the Georgia Peach Festival. It's June 2nd and 3rd in Fort Valley, Georgia. So that really tells you that this is definitely a peach place. Georgia's peach industry is concentrated in, Peach County, Crawford County, Taylor, and Macon counties. That general region has the most peach volume there. There's generally about a 44% increase in the number of available reefer loads out of Macon market last week. That's the busiest lanes were down to Lakeland, Florida, or even up to Nashville. Macon is also the big market for Vidalia onions, which were also on the move. So Macon was a pretty hot market to watch last week. Georgia peach farmers do expect this year's harvest to be lower than normal. The unseasonably warm February helped trees mature sooner than expected and made them more vulnerable to two separate frosts that happened in March. So potential impact there. The lower yields in Georgia may put more pressure on the Carolinas. South Carolina has the same May to August harvest as Georgia and actually harvests 3 times more peaches per season. North Carolina's peach season runs from June to September, with the peak hitting in July, though. Some tips that, I've heard from a lot of drivers about hauling peaches. Peaches and nectarines are relatively tender fruit and bruise pretty easily. They're usually harvested and shipped while still pretty firm, so that physical injury will be minimized during the transit. Most shippers package their fruit on flat, single-layer wood fruit crates, specially shaped with plastic or paper inserts for the fruit. But the short peach season in Georgia means the product has even higher value this year. So check in with your broker to make sure everyone is clear about temperature, humidity, moisture, ventilation requirements, any necessary inspections, loading, unloading procedures. It's going to be a high value load and may require newer reefer trailers and adequate insurance coverage. So communication is key to make sure that it gets there safely and everybody's happy with that. Do you have any tips for businesses? One of the things that I talk to drivers all the time about is making sure to post your truck. It's one of the things that, not like I said just a second ago, not a lot of drivers do. But you have more negotiating power when you're receiving a call from a broker that needs your service versus calling on loads and putting the broker in the power seat. So how do you get the brokers to call you? You post your truck. A lot of carriers don't want to post their truck. They worry that they'll be bombarded with too many calls. However, posting your truck with as much detail as possible shows the broker, exactly what they are getting when they give you a call. And, they have a better idea if you're going to be a perfect match for their truck. So a couple tips to go into what is an effective truck posting. Make sure to add the right equipment. So for instance, we're talking about produce season. When demand increases for reefer equipment, be specific about your equipment specs and capabilities. If you're a flatbed carrier and have a specialized trailer or tarps or chains, or experience hauling a particular commodity, or under really demanding road conditions, put all that in the description when you post. There's a comment section. It has a lot of room for you to put some information that brokers would want to know. Also, not a lot of drivers put in where they want to go, right? If you leave your destination blank, that actually is very confusing for a broker who, may will call you and you may to go to a destination you're not looking for. So include the desired destinations when you post your truck. When you leave that blank, you don't want to limit yourself and will go anywhere for the right money. That could be true, but it also opens the door to receiving calls about brokers' problem loads, the ones that are hard to cover because the rate is too low, or going to a market that no one wants to go in, or both. And who wants to get those calls for brokers' problem loads? Also, let the broker know what rate you want to make. It's a pretty controversial topic usually when I'm talking with carriers, but when you post a rate, it's really the starting point in the negotiation process. It lets the broker know that you're both in the same ballpark before they even pick up the phone. Once they provide the lane information, you can always adjust your rate accordingly based on the demand for that specific lane, and then let them know, hey, my price is actually up 25 cents per mile because it's coming out of Macon, Georgia, and it's peak season, and there's a lot of demand for trucks right now. So I actually need more money. And that's perfectly okay. Brokers usually will understand that, carriers are willing to go up a little bit or down a little bit, just depending on that negotiation process. Lastly, use the comment section of your load posts, of your truck posts. The comment section is where you can really sell yourself as a business. And that's super important because that's where you're going to set yourself apart from all the other trucks on the market. And it's going to help the broker understand that they can trust you to get that load there and take care of their customer. So posting your available truck can be especially useful in markets where the demand is high. Once your truck is posted, brokers can call you with the loads they need to move rather than the other way around, putting you as a driver in the driver's seat of the negotiation process.
How are diesel prices impacting the market?
The good news is for everybody is that diesel prices have continued to go down each week. If even at the beginning of the year, we were talking about diesel prices being all the way up to just $4.10, $4.20 per gallon. Last week, the good news is diesel prices continue to drop again on the national level, dropping down to $3.88 per gallon. That's down $1.68 from 1 year ago today. So great news there. When we look at how the whole nation stacks up for diesel prices, you have to look at places like California. California is still sitting at $4.82 per gallon, which is still super high. That's actually, we haven't seen a lot of change in the California gas prices across there. So if you're operating in the West Coast, just understand California is going to be where some of the highest fuel prices are in the country. The good news is as we were just talking, down in Atlanta and the Gulf Coast area, or the lower Atlantic, both of those are some of the cheapest fuel options in the country. The Gulf Coast region came in at $3.57 per gallon, and then the lower Atlantic came in at $3.78 per gallon for diesel prices down in those regions. So just understanding kind of where that is, the good, overall takeaway. Diesel prices continue to slowly drip down, but understand that could change as we start to see road trips, things like that start to kick in here in June, July, as kids get out of school and people start going on road trips. Usually see a higher demand for fuel, which potentially has upward pressure on some of those fuel prices.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much, Robert.
Thank you so much, Ashley.
That was Robert Rouse with DAT. Mark, back to you.
Thanks, Ashley. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline now. Welcome back. Every week we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. How brokers pay truckers has been an ongoing issue in the industry, but one trucker who stopped into The Spirit recently had a very unusual idea of how that process could work. I talked with Marty about that and about the problem with truckers who were following non-trucking GPS units, often into some very unfortunate circumstances.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
Doing fine. Where are you at?
I'm at the TA in Tooele, Utah. It's I-80 exit 99. It's got 191 parking spots, and they have a Burger King and a Taco Bell Express here. We'll be here the 1st and 2nd, and we'll be celebrating with Doug Smith at his dedication ceremony.
Well, fantastic. That's great.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, let us know how the party goes.
Will do.
In the meanwhile, let's talk about some of the issues that are coming into the truck there. And one of the first ones, and I'm kind of curious here, Marty, what is a flat fee brokerage?
Well, that's what I wanted to know. We had a gentleman stop in, one of our members, and he was asking if I had ever heard of a brokerage company doing a flat fee instead of us not ever knowing what the percentage that the broker is going to take, and if that would be something that we've ever heard of, or is it a new concept? And he has this idea that maybe it's a possibility to open up a brokerage and actually be one of the first ones to actually put out the numbers that everybody wants to know on what the load actually pays from the shipper, and just already know up front that the broker will take 9% was his number that he came up with. And I thought, it's a great idea. I would love to see it happen, because I think whoever jumped on that first would have a lot of people clamoring to work with that broker, not only on the trucking, the carrier side of it, but I think even the shipper side of it would look and say, okay, this is, we know all the numbers ahead of time, and that way everybody kind of knows what's going on, and there's no surprises later on. So I told him I had never heard of one, and I'd love to see one. So maybe at some point in time, him and his partner will be able to figure out how to make that happen. Otherwise, maybe there's some folks out there listening that say, that might not be a bad idea.
I'm kind of curious why someone hasn't tried it so far already.
Yeah, I don't know either. I really, think that there's so many of those things, though, that it takes somebody to have the thought and follow through and be willing to take a chance on it, because it would be different than most any of them that are happening out there. And so it would kind of be going against the grain. I've always thought that the first retail establishment that kind of like a Walmart or a Target or whoever, the first ones that said, how we have these low-cost leaders during Black Friday and that, instead of basically allowing the public to trample each other to get in to get these widgets or whatever we're selling at a low cost, be that first people that say, hold it, we don't want our customers to hurt themselves. And so we're going to have enough for everybody on that day. So it doesn't matter if you come in at 5 in the morning or 1 in the afternoon, it's still going to be there. And if we do run out, we'll give you a rain check and make sure you get it before Christmas. I just think that if they did that, it would bring a lot of people into their store just because maybe they're thinking that their customers are worth that little extra work on their part.
Yeah, and I like the idea of not being trampled. That's high up on my list.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a good one to have on the top of your list.
Well, it's an interesting concept, Marty, and maybe we'll see that gentleman that stopped by to see you try that out, and hope he gets back with us if he does.
I hope so, too. I really do.
Well, in the meanwhile, let's go on to another topic here, and that involves GPS. And I'm kind of curious, we've heard of some of the mishaps people have had with GPS. What was the case that you heard about?
Yeah, it was somebody had brought up one that happened in Wyoming. And, of course, now more and more are getting publicized because, we have videos, everything, and cameras, of course. And even, law enforcement are doing the putting things on Facebook and Twitter and all. So we're hearing about so many more incidents. And so I think that somehow, some way, we need to figure out a way we can get these drivers trained right, maybe during the process of getting their CDL, or maybe when they come to a carrier to get their first trucking job, and explain to them, teach them how to read a map, maybe even supply them with a trucker's atlas, which we all really depended on. I still have one in the truck, and I still want to look at it in case I'm going to a area that I haven't been to, or if I'm starting in a place that I'm not sure, am I allowed on this road or not? So many people use the Google Maps and something on their phone like that that is not truck oriented. And even the ones that are, you still have to kind of take a look and do some double checking on your own, maybe make some phone calls. And for goodness sakes, if you get yourself in a position where you see signs that say no trucks, stop. Okay, and if there's not a place to turn around, call the local law enforcement and see what they can do to help get you out of the issue. Don't just keep going and get yourself in more trouble than what you would have been if you would have just made that phone call. You see it all too often, and then you end up spending a lot more time and money than you would have had to if you would have just called and said, look, I messed up and I need some help. And most law enforcement, I'm sure, will come out and help you out of the situation.
Yeah, and there are truck-oriented GPSs, and it's much better to use those because one of the classic things, Marty, that I see is people that just use Google Maps, and they end up trying to get under a bridge that is simply not tall enough to accommodate a truck.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's so many instances like that. And, I mean, you can end up going to jail for some of this stuff. I saw one in Canada that they're charging the driver with hitting a bridge, and he could actually go to jail over this. And so it's not just monetary things that happen where your insurance is going to have to pay for a bridge or your truck or both or other people's property. It's just not worth the headache. So stop and then make that phone call.
Absolutely. And invest in a trucker GPS.
Absolutely.
Invest in the right kind of software.
Yeah, and keep them updated. Make sure that you update them fairly often.
Yeah, although I have to admit that reading a map thing, it sounds like the kind of thing that I would think would be pretty common sense, but there may be a generational thing here, Marty. You and I are kind of old codgers.
Well, and that's true, but I really do believe that if guys still had those atlases, they would learn a lot than just looking at right where they're at.
There you go. Well, Marty, we've run out of time. Any final words before you go off into the sunset?
Hey, guys, just be kind to one another and give that guy next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at landlinenow.com. And you can find the Spirit's complete schedule at the OOIDA website, ooida.com. That's our show. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.